as they are inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita, his true color of eternal association with the Lord became manifest, and thus he felt freed from all material contaminations. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Dam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnapadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priyam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna. I would like to seek the blessings of their lordships, the Parampara and Acharya Srila Prabhupada, and my superiors here, and all the assembled Vaishnavas, so that I'll be able to share something for my purification. Somehow Lord is following me always to meditate on his lotus feet. Okay, last time also I had the same opportunity. So here also Arjuna is actually constantly meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, which is able to increase his devotion, and at the same time it is able to remove his contamination. So same thing I hope will happen in my life also. Actually, I was just remembering when Prabhupada, when here in Purport there is a word trash. When I was just thinking, so once Prabhupada was there in some other country, there was a big van that was going, and they had written something in their native language, and which Prabhupada did not understand. And Prabhupada, when he asked his disciple, he said, it says the big van is saying it is big trash. And so Prabhupada said, this entire material world should be put in that big trash. So Prabhupada this was so spontaneous that Prabhupada said, so they could not understand, they could not realize. But Prabhupada, it was so spontaneous that, but for us it may not be the same, but we still have material desire, because of which we don't find it as trash. But that's what here it is said, when one Prabhupada is also saying, but only we realize it as a trash only when we come in touch with the Supreme Lord, and when we do bhakti, then here it is said that then that the naked form of that material desire to be trash, it becomes self-evident. But till then it looks very attractive, and till then it looks very promising, It looks very appealing. It looks very giving happiness, but it becomes pale when it comes in front of the Supreme Lord. So I was just thinking in these lines, and I was just seeing, especially Vyasdev, when he first time when he is there on the bank of uh, just one minute. So when Vyasdev is there on the bank of Saraswati, at that time he is actually meditating on the Supreme Lord. At that moment, he experiences, he sees the Supreme Lord, and so there is a verse. It says, "Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite amale apashyat purusham purnam mayam cha tad apashrayam." So it said, "Bhakti yogena manasi." That means he actually fixed his mind in bhakti on the Supreme Lord through the linking. Yogena is that he linked with the Supreme Lord on the platform of bhakti. Then samyak pranihite amale, and how he fixed this, his complete absorption was there. So that means his bhakti was complete. That means he had his full absorption only in bhakti path and nothing else. So with full absorption, he did focus on the Supreme Lord. Pranihite amale, and then there was without any tinge of any materialism. That means it was complete bhakti yoga. Then what was the result is apashyat purusham purnam. Then he could actually see the Supreme Lord. Purusham purnam, purna purusha. He could actually see, and then mayam cha tad apashrayam. Then actually could he see also the material nature in its true color, in its true perspective. Then he could see that the Maya is actually completely under the shelter of Krishna. So this he could actually completely observe. So that means when a devotee is actually practicing bhakti, actually he is the one who can actually see the material world and the material nature in its true color and true form. Because otherwise the materialists are speaking so much, having they're glamorizing the stay of the material world. They are actually glamorizing the pleasures of the material world, which actually they are saying that once I had been just hearing in one of the lectures. So there in one of the airports, they had put a big banner. The banner said, "The joy of sex." This was a book written by one of the famous author in the Western world, and he had put that big banner in the airport. All the people are passing by, and they want to glamorize, and they want to create a sensation. So, but on those who are even having some sense of goodness, forget about spirituality. Even those who have little sense of goodness, even they can actually understand it, that it is simply a biological activity, but which has been created such great hype, because of which people are actually getting trapped into it and they're becoming miserable. So that how it is Maya that can actually be observed only when we come to Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, when we are in actually under the modes and not connected to the Supreme Lord, at that time the trash remains very attractive. Just like for crows, the trash is very tasty. So for that living entity, in that sense, is all that material world also is very tasty, like that. So this is what he's saying, and then just and once Srila Prabhupada was. We all know one of the very close disciples of Prabhupada was Gargamuni, and this Gargamuni, once he wanted to just find out. He's, I think, a brother of Brahmanand Prabhu. So he came to Prabhupada and he asked, Prabhupada, what is the meaning of the name Garga Muni? At that time, Prabhupada was saying, Garga means big jug or big vessel. And then Muni means, Prabhupada is saying Muni. Usually in English, they also say Muni. Muni means money. So Prabhupada is saying, big jar full of money, Prabhupada is saying. And Prabhupada then Prabhupada asked, to keep it, Tamal Goswami Maharaj was just adding, Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Shri Radha Neel Madhav Bhagwan ki Jai. Shri Gaur Nitai ki Shri. Prabhupada was saying, Tamal Goswami Maharaj was saying, whether it is just to save, Prabhupada is saying, no, to escape from the government. Prabhupada is saying that in olden times, people used to, when they wanted to hide saving of tax from the government, they used to fill the jars of money and gold coins, and they would hide it in the ground, just so that the government doesn't come and snatch the tax from the people. So like that, Prabhupada was just saying, Gargamuni means in this connection. So why he was saying is, this material desire which is there, it can actually trap a living entity by which he hides. And so Prabhupada is just saying in that connection. So, and so in that connection, so the material desires are like that, which can actually trap a living entity in the material world. And so Prabhupada, in this connection, in his lecture, he was mentioning a point. What is the cause of we possessing this material body? The cause of our material body is this material desire. Prabhupada is very clearly saying, material desires in the mind, they are the trash, and because of this material desires, we get a material body. Because Krishna, we have material desires to be fulfilled. So Krishna has to give one material body. But when we take on this material body, that is the moment actually we get, Prabhupada is saying, we get both those things which are pleasing to our material body, and also those things which are not so pleasing. Both compatible and incompatible things which come in the life, and which come due to this possessing the material body. And that is the reason why there is so much of contamination, anxiety, and suffering. So Prabhupada is saying, if at all we want to give up this anxiety, contamination, and material suffering, we have to desire to give up this material body. Otherwise, there is no option. So the only option is try to give up this material body. Give up this material body not in the sense of artificially committing suicide, but in the sense of solving the root cause problem by meditating on the Supreme Lord. So that's what is being told. And then Prabhupada is saying, they accumulate due to our reactions to material desires. But when we get in touch with the Supreme Lord, then in his variegated energies by devotional service, the naked forms of all material desires become manifest. We actually realize that these material desires, everything is actually temporary, only in connection. So at once, I was just remembering, once there was, you may all know, Guru Nanak. He is one of the famous saints in Sikhism. So he was actually a very great realized saint. So one of the person who was very rich, he came to Guru Nanak, and he took him to his great treasury, and he was showing that just see how much I have treasury. And he went, and with a full big jar of gold coins, he had put one flag. Like that, he had numerous flags in his big treasury house. And Guru Nanak, he showed it to Guru Nanak. See how much I have. He showed. And then once Guru Nanak, what he told, he gave him one needle, and he told that you keep it with you, I'll come and collect it. At that time, this person was saying that, okay, I'll keep it, but when will you come and collect it? I said, it will take some time, but sometimes it may so happen that I may come and collect it in next lifetime. And he told, how will I keep till next lifetime? I'll not be able to keep so long. Then he told, then Guru Nanak told them, if you are not able to keep this one needle with you till next lifetime, then what will you do with all this big treasury that you are keeping? So sometimes the great saints, they have such amazing ways by which they can awaken that real knowledge. Because otherwise, the material desires are so strong and so thick, it becomes so difficult to be penetrated. But the great saints, they have that their sharp absorption in the Supreme Lord, because of which they can actually penetrate this thick gloom, which is actually covering the material minds, by which they can actually awaken that true knowledge, and they can awaken that renunciation also. So that's what. And also in this connection, I was just thinking, a devotee, when actually he meditates on the Supreme Lord, what actually happens? So, last time also we were actually discussing on the same lines, but today we were thought I'll discuss with some other verse. So these are we have already discussed also earlier. Marganti yatte mukhapadmanidais. All of you can also say it. Marganti yatte mukhapadmanidais. Chandas suparnai rishayo vivikte. Yasyaghamarshod saridvaraya. Padam padam tirtha pada prapanna. So here it is said, Marganti yatte mukhapadmanidais. So this verse actually is talking about two classes of devotees who are actually, one is those who are already reached perfection, and another class of devotees who are sadhakas. So these two classes of devotees, this verse is talking about. Those who are already reached the perfection level, they know where is their shelter, and they are actually on the platform of tasting, because they are already perfected. They are actually relishing the sweetness in connection with the Supreme Lord. So they are having, it is said, Marganti yatte mukhapadma nidais. They have their house or nests. They are all compared to birds. They have their nests on the lotus face of the Lord. Then they are continuously relishing. And they are all traveling Chanda Suparnair. They are all traveling with on the wings of Vedic hymns. That's what it is. Chanda Suparnair. And they all have their clear minds. Rishayo Vivikte. And those who are rishis, or those are sadhakas in this case, how are they able to come to the same spot? They may not be able to directly go to the lotus face of the Supreme Lord, but they can go to the lotus feet of the Lord, because those are pure devotees. They can actually fly in the air, and because they are already liberated from the material world, they are flying and they are going to the lotus face of the Lord. But those are sadhakas, still they are bound in the material world, but they can actually follow just the shadow of the exalted souls, just like the birds. They can follow that shadow and also can reach on the same spot, and they can actually reach the lotus feet of the Lord. Then what is the lotus feet of the Lord? It is mentioned Yasyagha Marshoda Saridvaraya. Then it is said that actually lotus feet, actually it can Yasya Agha Marshoda. That means actually it can actually clear off all the reactions which is there in a living entity. That means actually it can clear off all the minds. And then from that lotus feet actually is the Ganga river which is flowing. And these devotees, they can actually meditate on the Supreme Lord's lotus feet and also nullify the reactions. And also they can actually take bath in the river of water, that is Ganga, which is actually flowing from the Lord's lotus feet. And then what it can do is Tirtha Prapanna, because that lotus feet of the Lord is actually like the pilgrimage place. So Prabhupada, okay, in the next verse, I just want to add. This next verse is actually very amazing, which is in very much connection to today's verse. We can little more discuss this in detail. And this is 3.542. Yat shraddhaya shrutavatya cha bhaktya samrajyamane hridaye avadhaya ज्ञानेन वैराग्य बलेन धीरा ब्रजेम तत्ते अंघ्रि सरोज पीठम. It says yat shraddhaya shrutavatya cha bhaktya. That means yat means here that the last line it says angri saroja pitham. That means that lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, it is like a sanctuary, and on that, if suppose if one hears with great faith, that means in because bhakti means naturally it has this endowment of shraddha. If there is no shraddha, actually bhakti also will not awaken. So shraddha is actually a very primary element. So, and Shrutavatya. Shrutavatya means if one just hears the glories of the Supreme Lord, lotus feet. If one hears with great devotion, that means what here devotion actually means what? One is actually wanting to surrender oneself to that lotus feet, and one is wanting to give himself to that process of bhakti path, and with faith, and if just hearing, then what happens? Samrijyamane hridaye avadhaya. And then what he's doing is he's doing avadhaya. Avadhaya means he's doing actual meditation. He's like when he's actually meditating on the Supreme Lord's lotus feet, samrijyamane hridaye. That means everything that is troubling the heart and the mind gets actually cleansed. And then it awakens three things, it is said. Vajnanena vairagya balena. And then one becomes dhira. Jnanena vairagya balena dhira vrajema tattengri sarojapita. It is said, simply by hearing about your lotus feet with eagerness and devotion, and by meditating upon them within the heart, one becomes enlightened with knowledge, and on the strength of detachment, one becomes pacified. We must therefore take shelter of the sanctuary of your lotus feet. So that means it awards two things. One is knowledge and detachment. Because of these two things, actually one becomes dhira. Dhira means one who is always in a state of complete sobriety. So that means one is not agitated in because he'll neither become fearful and nor does he become slave to his own conditionings. So here, why does he become? Why does he lose his fear? That is because of knowledge. Because when one is in knowledge of the reality of the material world and the reality of the existence and the reality of the path of bhakti, then he becomes very much calm. Then he becomes actually in that knowledge, he loses his fear. And second thing is on the strength of detachment, because he doesn't have that craving which is within to enjoy, and because he has controlled his senses, because of which he'll be also able to become very sober. That means he will not fall prey to something which is actually temporarily titillating to his mind and senses. Then he becomes actually very sober. Then Prabhupada says, he gives very nice purport. I thought we can just read this purport and little discuss. The miracles of meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord with eagerness and devotion, they are so great that no other process can compare to it. So that means meditating on the lotus feet is the process which is actually meant for cleansing the contamination, and there is no other process. Even if you see the Ashtanga Yoga process, which is actually mentioned in Bhagavatam, which Kapila Muni is mentioning, there also, even in the process of Ashtanga Yoga, he is saying that one should actually meditate on the Supreme Lord. So that means this is the process which is actually can cleanse the contamination for all the paths of yoga. And there is no other process which can compare to it. The minds of the materialistic persons are so disturbed that it is almost impossible for them to search the supreme truth by personal regulative endeavors. So that means the minds are so disturbed, because of which they'll not be able to find out by their regulative endeavors. That means either it is path of karma or jnana. But even such materialistic men, with little eagerness for hearing about the Lord's transcendental name, fame, qualities, etc., can surpass all other methods of attaining knowledge and detachment. Because of wanting to attain this knowledge and detachment, people are actually taking to subsidiary paths. So why should we want to take to this subsidiary? Directly, if one can take to process of bhakti, then actually one can attain. The conditioned soul is attached to this bodily conception of the self, and therefore he is in ignorance. But what blocks one to take up this is the bodily conception of life. The culture of self-knowledge can bring about detachment from material affection. And without such detachment, there is no meaning to knowledge. So if one has knowledge, means one should be able to get detached from material affection. Otherwise, there is no meaning to knowledge. The most stubborn attachment for material enjoyment is sex life. So because this is the one actually, sex life is the one, it is said sex life is the one which actually rivets the consciousness of the living entity to flesh. That means it makes the consciousness get fixed on into the flesh. Flesh means body. That means matter. So that means the living entity's consciousness will not allow to get out of the matter. So the sex life is actually like that, which actually it is the most stubborn attachment, Prabhupada. And then one who is attached to sex life is to be understood to be devoid of knowledge. It actually one loses all knowledge because of attachment, such attachment. Knowledge must be followed by detachment. But this detachment will not awaken if the knowledge is just on the platform of pure jnana. But actually, if it is there with bhakti, detachment is easily possible. That is the way of self-realization. These two essentials for self-realization, knowledge and detachment, become manifest very quickly if one performs devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord. The word dhira is very significant in this connection. A person who is not disturbed even in the presence of the causes of disturbance is called dhira. So that means though the disturbance is there, he is actually not agitated. He is not disturbed. Sri Yamunacharya says, since my heart has been overwhelmed by the devotional service of the Lord Krishna, I cannot even think of sex life. And if thoughts of sex come upon me, I at once feel disgust. A devotee of the Lord becomes elevated dhira by the simple process of meditating in eagerness on the lotus feet of the Lord. So he's giving the example of this dhira who is actually meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord. So because of which he is able to feel that disgust. Because one thing is, sex life is so much glamorized, especially in the modern times. Last time also we were discussing how people are glamorizing the process of material romance. But actually all these things are even I was just saying that even on the platform of simple materialistic knowledge, people actually can see that it is very petty and it has no much, it has no deep satisfaction, because people are just trying to suck something from body. So, but actually it cannot, because body is already dead matter. What it can give pleasure? So, devotional service entails being initiated by a bona fide spiritual master and following his instruction in regard to hearing about the Lord. Such a bona fide spiritual master is accepted by regularly hearing from him about the Lord. The improvement in knowledge and detachment can be perceived by devotees as an actual experience. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu strongly recommended this process of hearing from bona fide devotee, and by following, one can achieve the greatest result of conquering all the other methods. So, we can also see in example of how one can become actually dhira by meditating on the Supreme Lord. If you see that how Bilvamangal Thakur, though he was very exalted soul, he had still some material contamination in his heart, because of which he was still attached to the prostitute. So, but as soon as uh, one statement which was actually told by this Chintamani, it actually brought great awakening in him. And even after, so that at that moment he feels that let me give up this, and then he just starts walking away. At that moment, he, even when he thinks that let me go to Vrindavan, even then his attachment has not gone. He has still that deep attachment in the heart, which is actually troubling him. At that moment, but one thing it is said, so even while he was going on the way, he meets one lady, and she had just taken bath and she was going to, and then he was observing that lady, and then he starts following her, and then she goes back to her home, and then she tells her husband that he's following me, the sadhu is following, and then the sadhu comes directly to the door, and then husband says we must respect sadhu, so then they welcome, and then then he goes and asks that how can I serve you. At that time he says that I want to talk to your wife personally. At that time then husband sends and then he asks, can you give me your hairpin? And then he takes that hairpin, and then he removes both of his eyes. So, which is actually unimaginable. And and another thing that we can understand, Bilvamangal Thakur is not on the platform of just the mere Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. We can understand because of his so much, he had already so much of devotion that he was already on the platform of, it is said, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, all Bhava Bhakti, because of which he had actually, he could just pluck out his eyes through those hairpins. But for us, even to just prick our eyes becomes so difficult, because we have so much of body attachment at this stage. So, but Bilomangal Thakur was actually on exalted platform, and but he could actually do that. He could actually prick his eyes and remove his eyeballs. That was possible, and then he started walking towards Vrindavan, and that means, and he could give up this attachment, which was possible, and that was actually only possible because he was actually meditating on the Supreme Lord. So that strength of detachment also comes only by practice of bhakti. Otherwise, that detachment also is not steady detachment. So that's what I feel. That's what I could understand from this verse. So, other devotees can please add. Prabhuji, add some. Please add something. I'm just sharing my own life. And Krishna is giving me good opportunity to meditate.
sticking to the uncompromising. There is a versus